Good morning, third grade. I am so excited. Why am I excited? Because now it's on. Now we really get to start ramping up for Rome. Before, Rome was just this nice little calm, peaceful society, and now it gets exciting. So we are about to enter the most exciting week, or well, the start of the excitement as we go. So we have the rest of this week, well, the next 3 days anyway, to talk about the Punic Wars. This is what starts Rome off into building their territory and to creating an empire, not just a republic. So now it's starting to get exciting. This is going to be it. So we're going to be talking about the 3 Punic Wars. Punic actually comes from the Latin term, or is the Latin term for the Phoenicians. And the Phoenicians were actually the original crew or the original peoples to settle and begin the country and the empire known as Carthage. And Rome's battles with Carthage is really what these Punic Wars are all about. The Punic Wars lasted for over 100 years. So this wasn't just a whole bunch of really quick battles and everything was done and settled. No, it took a long time. And well, why did it take a long time? This is 2,000 years ago. So think about it. They don't have electricity. They don't have internet. They don't have phones. They don't have the technologies that we have. They have to walk everywhere or get on a boat that doesn't have a motor. They have to row or use sails to get everywhere. And these are long distances. So in order to set up an army and set up a military and set up a navy, you've got to talk and get messages back and forth, like with you can't just pick up the phone and say, all right, we're going to meet at this location tomorrow at 5. Go. No. If you're traveling over 100 miles, 200 miles, 500 miles, you have to get everything and all your supplies ready to go. You have to talk to people to make sure that things are happening. You can't just write it in an email and send it out and know they understand it. Everything took a lot longer to happen. So 100 years worth of wars. But at the end of these 100 years, Rome is going to be a world power. So how do they get there? Well, we're about to find out. Today, we are learning about the First Punic War. So the Punic Wars, like I said, 3 wars fought between Rome and Carthage between 264 and 146 BC. Now you're probably like, Mrs. Colley, why are you going backwards? Well, again, remember we're BC, so we're starting with our big numbers and working up to 0 before we start climbing back up again. These were the largest wars that had ever been fought to this day. Think millions of people. Crazy amount of millions and millions of people. So here are some of the stories. The First Punic War, which was about a 23-year war. Yep, that is longer than all of you have been alive. 23 years. So let's take a look at our fancy map to take inventory of who owns what. We have Rome, its republic, and all of its allies are in the red, and they cover up pretty much the entire boot of modern-day Italy. Then you've got in green, Syracuse. Syracuse was a very small nation, but they were a very peaceful nation, and they didn't want to get involved in any wars or battles. It's not gonna take all that much time for them to get involved in this one. And then there was the Carthaginian Empire. Yes, empire. They are all in purple, and they actually owned a little bit more than just this. They owned a little bit more over on this eastern portion over here as well. But their main ports and their main trade routes and all of their main cities and territories are in the purple. Now the battle, this war really gets started when Rome, which just took the land of Rhegium over here, decides to go and try to conquer the small area of Messana. Flip over here for a moment. So they decide to go in and have a nice little conversation right in this area in the city of Messana. And it doesn't go well. Syracuse thinks they're being attacked, so they, because that's sort of neutral land, and now the Romans are sort of encroaching on neutral land. And well, Carthage, they really wanted that land for themselves. And Syracuse is like, you're all getting a little close. So Syracuse asks for Carthage's help, and Carthage sends people to Messina, and the Romans go, hey, you weren't supposed to send people here. This isn't Carthage land. And they immediately turn on the battlefront. Now, Rome wins the first battle. Oh, yeah. The Roman army is impressive. It's incredible. And later this week, maybe next week, you're going to learn all about the Roman army and how impressive they were and what they did and why they were amazing. So they win the first battle. But it's not that simple, because Carthage is quite good at other things, not just foot battles. Now, Carthage had some crazy, crazy, amazing trade routes. Take a look at all of those little red lines all up over in there. And, excuse me, and they wanted to make sure that their trade routes were kept safe, and they wanted to increase their trade routes to continue throughout the entirety of the island of Sicily. Well, Rome didn't want that. Rome wanted their trade routes to include that portion. So hence the battles begin. Here is a better look at the political map of Sicily and who was in charge. Syracuse, right down here. We had Rome, who just took over this area. And all of this belonged to Carthage, except for this little port city right here, where the problem started. Now, let's talk about Carthage. We know a little bit about Rome so far. We don't know about their army, but their army, let me just tell you, is the most powerful army, foot, think on the ground, army by foot, not by sea, by land. Rome has the most powerful army pretty much in the world right now. They're known for their army. They are not known for their navy. Carthage, currently the second largest city in the world, is completely a sea city. They are relying heavily on their trade routes, dealing with sailing. They take their ships back and forth everywhere to trade. They are a sea power. Their sailors are well trained. They had many warships. And this was actually a naval port of theirs, this fancy picture that was drawn up. Now, of course, we don't have pictures from back in the day, but this is an artist rendering, which means using lots of research and lots of information from people who did write things down from way back when. This is what we believe that the Carthage seaport actually looked like. So it was huge. You have this circular area right here, which is where our naval base, or their naval base, would have been. Plenty of docks for all of their ships. They could enter out here. There could be more warships. It was said that you could hold as many as 220 warships in their naval base. And this kept the ships safe from storms, from washing away into the ocean. This was a nice, safe place, and a place for ships to be built and repaired as well. So they were prepared to sail into battle at sea. Rome was not. Warships at the time had huge sails for long distance travel, but during combat, those sails would be lowered and oars would be used. So these were huge ships. Think 2,000 years ago, these ships were made. And then all the oars right out here. And here is an inside view of what that would look like. So you'd have slaves on the inside manning these giant oars. And they'd be almost stacked on top of each other, sitting on different leveled benches, manning all the oars. All the ships would also have something called a rostra, plural rostrum, and a rostra would be at the front or the bow of a ship. Now, Roman and Punic warships were fitted with these rostra, which were actually bronze rams. Oh, yeah. And the purpose for them would be to slam in at top speed and hit other ships. Very cool. This was their sailing plan. They would go out. Their navy would row and row and row, and the slaves below would row and row and row as hard as they could and ram into and smash another ship. And typically, they would smash right into and break another ship apart. So this was the ramming tactic that the Carthaginians favored, and this was how they won a lot of their battles. They would just ram into other ships and take them down. Now, this was also the most expensive part of a ship. So the rostra, when another ship was taken or was sunk or broken, this would be saved either by the same army that built it, or it would be captured and taken. Excuse me. They would be reused as well. They were big bronze heads, and they were just fantastic for breaking things apart. So they'd either be reused on other ships, or they would be taken, and if they were in Rome, be taken and put on display in the Forum, which was like the city square where people would go and do speeches. And that's actually where we get the term podium, is from the term rostrum, which means platform to stand on. So, ramming speed. They would, take out other ships. The Romans were not doing well at all. At all. They were suffering. Romans did not have an army or they didn't have a navy for sailing. They had a few ships. They were not doing well at sea, and they were badly outmatched by Carthage. And after a very swift defeat at the Battle of the Lipari Islands, where Rome pretty much lost all of its ships and most of its men, the Romans decided this could not continue because the Carthaginians were just destroying and decimating their army and their navy, which they really didn't have one. And so Rome had two choices. They had a decision to make. They had two choices. They could either give up and say, you know what, we are not good at this navy thing, and obviously Carthage is, so this isn't a fair fight and we should stop. Or how do we make our navy better and bring it? And you know what they did? They decided to bring it. Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness, yeah. 2 months after the Battle of Lipari, 2 months, think about that, 60 days, about 60 days later, Rome showed back up with 100 warships ready to go and a full navy to sail those warships into battle. 2 months, 60 days. Could you imagine how much they had to pull together to make 100 ships in 60 days and completely crew them? Yeah, Rome means business. They're not backing down. Go big or go home. They're going to go big, and they're going to take Carthage down. Rome also showed up with a surprise. They had really smart people working for them, and they came up with something called the Corvis. Now, Corvis is Latin for the term crow, which they think they got they named it after the crow's beak. You can see there on the up below, and the Corvis would be raised up on the ship, and then what the Romans would do is they'd get right up close to a Carthage ship, and then lower it right down on top of the Carthage ship. Now notice it's got this little spikes on the end of the boarding dock right there, and those would dig into the other ship, and then the Romans could just march right off of their ship onto the Carthage ship. They were basically turning the naval warfare into army warfare. They could just march right over. So they didn't need to be good sailors. They were still fantastic swordsmen and fantastic fighters for the army. They could just stand ready to go and then march right aboard and take over the Carthaginians ship by ship by ship, using their army tactics on the sea. But really, they just brought a land battle to the sea. So they would board the Carthage ships and just attack. None of they didn't need a navy. Rome didn't need a navy. They could just take all of their guys who were fighting for the army in the military, put them on a boat, and then lower the Corvis, and then march aboard and fight them like they would be fighting on land. It was fantastic until it wasn't. See, the Corvus was really, really, really top heavy. Imagine you're sailing and you have this giant thing just on top of your ship. You get big enough waves, your ship is just going to flip over. So it didn't take long for the Corvus to get replaced by, you guessed it, the catapult right down there. The catapult was then created, invented by the Romans, and it included a barbed dart that was attached to a chain, and this dart would get sent off by the catapult, lodge into the ship, and the Romans would just reel in the other ship so that they could, land and attack. It was much smaller, much safer than the Corvus, and worked about as well. Because of this, oh, Rome, Rome did lots and lots and lots and lots of damage. Oh yeah, it was fantastic. Uh, and while they're fighting at sea, they're still fighting on land. So the Roman army is sort of split between two places, the sea battles and all the land battles. Like in the Battle of Agrigentum in 262, well, the Romans do some pretty massive attacks there. And then in 242, Rome shows up with a 200 ship fleet. This fleet was paid for by rich citizens of the Roman Republic. Rome had a new consul, and the consul said, look, we need to end this. We need to end this now. It needs to stop. We've been fighting for so long. All these people are dying. Our armies are holding off the land, but the sea battles need to come to an end now. And so all the ships were paid for by rich citizens of the Republic, which I wonder how much money they really had if they could afford to, make 200 ships. It's a lot. And they take down Carthage at sea. 50 ships are sunk, 70 ships are captured, and 10,000 prisoners of Carthage are taken by the Romans. Now, this guy right behind me here, this is Hamilcar Barca, and he is currently in Carthage. He is one of the few generals who was able to defeat a Roman army. But he is still in Carthage and therefore avoids imprisonment and takes off back to Carthage when the rest of the Carthaginian government, surrenders to Rome and says, "We're sorry, we'll back off now." So he avoids being captured, thank goodness. Well, thank goodness for our story anyway, because he's going to show back up in the future. But he was quite deadly on land. Rome got very lucky that they didn't continue battling with him. But after this awful defeat at sea, Carthage, they've been battling now for 20 some years. They don't have the money to keep going. They don't have another 10,000 people to put at sea to take out Rome. So they start looking for peace terms. They say, "Hey, look, let's draw a truce." A truce. Carthage is defeated and asks for a truce. Not a, "you can have everything you want, we give up," but a truce. We're going to back off. We're sorry we fought you. What will it take to get you to leave our land? And this is what Rome says. 1, you're going to pay us 3,200 talents of silver over about the next 10 years, which is about $53.34 million in our terms of how much silver is worth. Then Carthage agrees to leave Sicily completely. So they hand over the entire island of Sicily, and they hand over the islands of Corsica and Sardinia. They have to pay a yearly tribute of reparations to Rome. Yearly, as in every year they have to send money to Rome as a, "We're sorry, we are so sorry for fighting you. Here is your money, you great and powerful land of Rome." Think that's going to make them feel good? Every year they have to be reminded of this, and they have to go and pay Rome every year. Yes, this is why this doesn't end here. But right now, the First Punic War, it's over. So let's take a look. This was our fantastic map before the Punic War started. Take a look at, this is Sicily, Corsica, Sardinia, the poor land of Syracuse, and after the First Punic War, well, there's no longer a Syracuse, and the Roman Empire now expands to the top of the boot, a little bit into here, across into the Iberian Peninsula, which is now Spain, Corsica, Sardinia. But now take a look at, we're in the green. The orange is coming. I would say, all right, let's continue. But Second Punic War, round 2, will be continued tomorrow. This might be my favorite of all the Punic Wars. Actually, I know it's the favorite of all the Punic Wars because we meet someone named Hannibal Barca, who is one of the greatest generals in all of history. And no, he fights on the Carthage side. But he's awesome. And we're going to learn all about him tomorrow. So, from Mrs. Colley's history class, we'll see you tomorrow. And we're going to be learning about the Second Punic War. Have a great day, 3rd grade.